The first question that I really wanted to ask you was, ahead of playing this character, did you reach out to Mark Wahlberg to talk about the character and taking on the role he once had?
I did not reach out to Mark Wahlberg. I didn't get the chance to communicate with him about the role at all. But I'll tell you, I did watch Ted 1 and Ted 2 ad nauseum until, those movies were in my bones for sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're funny movies, so definitely worth watching no matter what.
100%.
Was there anything that you wanted to accomplish specifically with the character that would differentiate this younger version compared to that older version in the movies?
I don't know if there was anything specifically going in that I was like, oh, this is how I'm going to make it different. Because it is still a character that we all know and love. But I did want to be very careful to not do a Mark Wahlberg impression. Like, I didn't want to do his voice exactly. This is the same guy, but it's a different period of his life. He's not nearly as confident. He's just as brash. He's just as stupid. But it's a different stage in his life. But in terms of making it clear that this is a younger guy and a younger version of the same character, a lot of that's in the text. A lot of it's in the script, in the writing. In the situations.
Yeah.
He hasn't. As far as the first episode goes, he's not a stoner yet. His first time smoking weed has yet to come. It's a show about a lot of firsts, and I feel like that does a lot of the heavy lifting in differentiating these two periods in his life.
For you, what were you most hesitant about, heading into this project? What was the biggest thing that you worried about?
I think the biggest thing I was worried about going into it was, number one, I'd never worked with any CGI elements before. That was pretty new, and I didn't really know what that was going to be like. It ended up being fine. You get used to it after a week or so. But the other thing that I was definitely concerned about was, for sure, the Boston accent. The studio set me up with a fantastic dialect coach who I owe a lot of the success to. In terms of the accent, I know that Bostonians are very particular when they're judging somebody's fake Boston accent, and I had to make sure that I wasn't going to get ripped to pieces.
You mentioned Ted and how it's a CGI creation, and so I wanted to ask, how was it working with a character like Ted? How is that handled?
It's handled pretty well and pretty efficiently. They had it's largely the same team. So they had 2 movies worth of experience to fall back on in terms of how to make it go smoothly. On the acting side, it's pretty wild for the first little bit, having to look at empty space and really, really try and visualize the little guy being there. Like I said, after a couple weeks, it gets smoother and you start to be able to almost on command hallucinate him a little bit. And there's still some bumps in the road every now and then, but mostly I can look at my couch right here in my apartment where I'm sitting and picture him sitting on it and know where his eyes are. And if he were to get up and run into the kitchen, I know how fast he would be going.
Was Seth MacFarlane ever there to voice the character in person? Or was it somebody else
every
reading?
Day.
Okay, so he was there every day?
Every day. He directed every episode and was doing the voice of Ted live. He'd be either in another room or on the other side of the room, off camera, looking at the monitors, and doing the voice right there in real time, which was a godsend because we could improvise, we could bounce stuff off of him. The timing was there.
Yeah,
great.
I can imagine that was very helpful. Which member of the cast do you wish that you had more scenes with?
So most of my scenes were with Georgia, who plays Blair, and with the bear. So I do wish I had gotten more scenes with Scott and Alana, because they are 2 of the funniest people on the planet. They can take it to this level that almost no one else can.
You also had, pretty prominent role in something like Parenthood. How different was your time on Ted compared to a show like that?
Wildly so. Definitely different vibes in terms of the content. I would say the biggest similarity is how close everybody got over the course of shooting. Parenthood, we were this massive family. Ted, we're a smaller family, but we still all got very close. We saw each other all the time offset, which was great. But in terms of subject matter, crazily different. And also in terms of sort of how much was expected of me in terms of the size of the role. I had a fairly big role in Parenthood, but not something that could be considered a lead per se. And in this, it was a lot harder work, longer days, more days, a lot more responsibility for sure.
Everyone has their own experiences throughout high school. Did you utilize any specific moments from your own while filming Ted?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles, so I was certainly smoking weed legally in high school. So definitely drew on that a little bit, tried to cast my mind back to like my first few times getting stoned, especially for like the smoking sequence in the first episode before they become proper stoners. Definitely cast my mind back to those nights.
For you, what was your favorite episode of the series of season 1?
My favorite episode might be the Halloween episode. It has my favorite joke in it, which is Ted doing the Milgram experiment joke. And also the stuff that I got to do with Danny Jollis, who plays Will, was so unhinged. Those were probably the hardest scenes to shoot throughout the entire event series, just because he is like a lovely, very sweet guy who's playing an absolute insane person. And those scenes were really fun to shoot. Also, I got to throw eggs at people from a roof. And that was pretty dope.
You don't get to do that every day.
No. I mean, you could. You'd go to jail, but you could.
That's true. You use the word event series because I wanted to ask, do you think Ted will be renewed for a second season, or is this kind of a one and done?
I honestly couldn't tell you at this point. I know people are really going to love it, and that gives me some hope for season 2 for sure. But I haven't heard anything either way yet. But I would if the opportunity came around where I could come back to this character with these people, it'd be perfect.
What surprised you the most about your time on this series?
I think the first thing that surprised me was how quickly I got over the whole CGI bear of it all, and it became less of like an obstacle to overcome and more of just like, oh yeah, I'm having a chat with my best friend who happens to be a teddy bear.
As one does.
Also, I was pretty nervous coming into it just because, as I said, this was, a big sort of leap forward for me in my career. It was a big step up in terms of like being a lead in a show. And what surprised me was how quickly those nerves went away. After the first 2-3 days, it's such a efficient, well-run, but also like very kind and open and accepting set and group of people, whether it's the cast, whether it's the crew, whether it's Seth or the producers. Everybody was so down to have fun and play that it took any pressure off of my shoulders immediately.
I want to pivot real quick. I want to ask you about Invincible. At one point in time, you were actually listed on IMDb as voicing Oliver Grayson, a major character who only just barely got introduced at the end of season 2. But that doesn't seem to have passed, and the listing has since been edited to properly reflect your voice work. Did that ever come to your attention?
I didn't know that truly, I'm learning of it in this moment. I did have a couple lines in the first season of Invincible. I don't believe I was playing Oliver Grayson. That might have just been some oversight by somebody at some point. But no, that was not me.
Yeah, I remember seeing it, and then I looked it up again within the last day or so, and it looks like someone had finally changed it to be correct. So,
yes.
And, another franchise that you've been in is The Purge. You were in the original movie when you were younger. Mm-hmm. How interested in returning as the same character one day would you be?
To return as Charlie Sandon would be very interesting. I mean, who knows what he's been getting up to in the intervening years. That was one of the most age-appropriate roles I've ever played, where I was actually playing my own age. So, we're 12 years later now, so an adult Charlie Sandon in the middle of The Purge would definitely be something interesting to explore.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the last Purge movie, but the whole U.S. is in a unique situation, so it could be fun.
Yeah. I wonder if he survived this long.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Now, my final question for you is a broader one, but for you as an actor, what's a dream role that you hope to one day get? It could be a specific or just a type of role.
Type of role. I've always wanted to play a villain. I've always wanted to play just like a real unredeemable piece of shit. Just some of my favorite roles that I see just out in the world. Just like people who truly blow me away. Like Heath Ledger's Joker is a classic. You've got Moriarty in the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock series. I think is just a masterclass. I would love to play a very bad person. It just looks like a lot of fun and like you can take a lot of liberties.